In Florence, it's impossible to escape from the Medici. Everywhere you look, you can see their coat of arms, made out of palle, or balls. It's as if they've trademarked the city for eternity.
A lot of balls has been talked about the famous Medici balls. There's a modern myth according to which they're medicine pills. Medici, medicine, not true. The Medici themselves like to pretend that they were descended from a valiant knight who performed heroic deeds and that these were the dents on his shield. Not true. What they actually symbolised right from the start was bezants, coins. They're tangible symbols of the fact that these were men who dealt in money.
The family's extraordinary journey began with Giovanni di Bicci. Born into poverty, this hard-nosed merchant had a plan to make his family rich. Giovanni set up the first Medici bank in Florence in 1397, which traded on this exact spot.
Now, there was nothing discreet or well-mannered about the world of Renaissance banking. These were money traders who carried out their work in public, in the market. Each one of them would call out his best offer of the day. I've got 50 florins to lend you to be paid back by St. John's Day. I've got 30 florins to be paid back by Christmas. And each banker would work from his own table, set up in one of the aisles of the market. Banco is Italian for table, hence our word bank. And it was a high-risk business. They were going bust all the time, and when they did go bust, they had to ceremonially break their table, hence the English word bankrupt, bancarotto, broken table.
The first Medici bank succeeded because it had rules, such as don't lend to royalty, they never pay you back. This was the birth of capitalism, and no family prospered more than the Medici. But the Medici were also men of their time, devout Christians, bound by church laws.
The world of the afterlife, teeming with angels and demons, was every bit as real to the Medici imagination as the world in which they traded. And that gave them a problem, because according to the Bible, usury, money lending, was a mortal sin. God had decreed that man might save himself by labour, but there was no sweat on the Medici brow because they got their money through interest, by doing nothing at all. And as the riches piled up on the credit side of their ledger, they were terrified of what lay on the debit side, the threat of eternal damnation.
The church of Santa Maria Novella contains a fresco where the Medici's worst nightmares would have been realized. This is the Strozzi Chapel, painted in the 1350s by an artist called Nardo di Cione to give Florentines a glimpse of the afterlife. The reason the chapel was really famous, it was known as La Cappella dell'Inferno, is because it contains this monumental, extraordinary depiction of the terrors of hell. And in fact, it's the first really epic depiction of hell as Dante had described it. There's one scene in particular that would have struck terror into the heart of a Medici. It's the seventh circle of hell, presided over by an evil-looking winged demon called Geryon, in which were placed blasphemers, sodomites, and moneylenders. The fresco's much faded now, but peer closely and you can still make out the desperate hands of the usurers under a downpour of fire. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, because this chapel's also a vivid demonstration that there was a get-out clause for Renaissance moneylenders. According to church doctrine, you could buy your way out of hell. You could purchase salvation by sponsoring a great work of art and architecture such as this. And it was indeed paid for by a moneylender, a man called Tommaso Strozzi. There he is with his wife, and the artist's been careful to paint him being led by an angel towards the congregation of the blessed. Food for thought for a Medici. Pay for a spectacular work of art, and maybe save your soul. Bankers were accused of splintering society because they created debt and greed and division. All the more reason to give to the church, the place where people were brought together. And in Florence, there was no more communal building than the baptistry, where every single citizen, rich or poor, was christened. In 1401, a great pair of bronze doors was commissioned to the glory of God. And Giovanni di Bicci, the head of the Medici family, was on the committee that chose the artist. Now, the Medici involvement with art in Florence begins right here on this spot. And the artist whom Giovanni di Bicci and his fellow committee members chose to create this great work was a man called Lorenzo Ghiberti. Ghiberti invented a totally new method of sculpting in bronze. Each panel was cast in a single piece, which gives these images a tremendously organic quality. Each one's a story distilled to its essentials, a miniature drama from the life of Christ. Here's the Last Supper, apostles hunched round the table. Here's Christ on his donkey, entering Jerusalem. And there's even an image of the traders, money bags and all, being driven from the temple. A small reminder of the ancient Christian distrust of riches. Now, it took Ghiberti in his workshop more than 20 years to complete these great doors. They were finished in 1424, just 5 years before Giovanni di Bicci died. And I think that when he looked up at what he and his fellow committee members had been responsible for commissioning, it was so much in excess of what anyone could have expected. This really is one of the great masterpieces of early Renaissance art. But I think it alerted him, and indeed the whole Medici family, to the potential of art. Giovanni's son, Cosimo il Vecchio, expanded the Medici Bank across Europe.
Ci posso fare un espresso, grazie.
And with new wealth came new opportunities.
Cosimo was a political genius who turned the Medici into the most powerful family in Florence. But he also knew that the city was a republic, in name at least, where everybody was supposed to be equal. So he dressed in the plainest clothes and even rode a donkey instead of a horse. He was determined to do everything he could to wipe the stain of usury from his family's reputation.
This is the monastery of San Marco. In the 1430s, the Pope promised Cosimo redemption if he would pay for its construction. A heaven-sent opportunity to launder his piles of dirty money.
It was fairly standard practice for extremely rich people to endow a chapel, to commission a cycle of religious frescoes. But here, the Medici had paid for the construction of an entire monastery. This was a completely unprecedented act of private patronage. It seems that as far as Cosimo il Vecchio was concerned, when it came to the state of his eternal soul, money really was no object. And it seems that cautious old Cosimo, having discovered the joy of art, became ever more daring in his tastes. He fostered the unconventional genius of Donatello, who created this statue of David for the Medici palace. David was a traditional symbol of Florence, but that was just a pretext for a shocking experiment. The first freestanding nude since Roman times. The statue is now being restored by Dr. Ludovica Nicolai. She's been lovingly cleaning the figure for 18 months.
Sono curioso di sapere, quando lei vive così con una statua, si cambia l'attitudine? Che pensi ora di questa?
Sì, è vero, il rapporto quotidiano fa arrivare è un rapporto diverso, stringono i modi di essere, no?
Sì.
Verso la scultura.
Ma la situazione è molto intima qui.
Sì.
Scusi, David. Per me, vedere David così, con questo famoso sederino
all'aria,
in piena vista, all'aria, mi sembra come era scioccante quando la prima volta che hanno visto questa statua, la prima rappresentazione del nudo.
Sì, infatti, e poi anche come nudo è molto ambiguo, cioè molto strano, no? Perché non è completamente maschio e non è completamente femmina, cioè non è femmina. E quindi
c'è un'ambivalenza, sì.
Il passaggio tra la pubertà e l'adolescenza, quando un maschio non è ancora completamente maschio e non è naturalmente femmina. E quindi appunto il sedere è ancora molto femminile.
Sì, il miracolo di Donatello è che ha presto questo momento.
Sì, si è accolto proprio questo momento prima della sbocciatura completa.